If you are interested in reaching the point of your hair loss restoration journey when the scalp has been successfully reset back to its pre-balding conditions, you are ultimately attempting to reach the regrowth threshold. Here are your coordinates. I am AQBS and this is Back to the Barber. Let me help you eliminate your hidden fear regarding hair loss and perhaps tell you exactly why you are on this channel. You feel uneasy about the possibility of losing more hair or looking in the mirror only to see the person looking back that is not you, at least not the version of you that you want to present to the world. It is like a lesser copy of you that you once were. You've tried everything. You've researched, bought and used lab-based solutions, tried natural therapeutics, yet you are not fulfilled. You are not content. Deep down, you know there is something missing. It's hard to put into words, but you can't quite shake the feeling that even if I don't have the answer, I represent the possibility that it exists, and your intuition is correct. There's another aspect of hair loss restoration that is relatively unknown, one that I am experiencing right now as you listen to my voice. It is what I have been alluding to when I've stated scalp conditions must be met and maintained. We are not that different. I know that your greatest fear in hair loss is that no matter what you do or take, you cannot reverse your hair loss back to its original state. I am aware that many of you feel the course is out of your control and the arrival looks very dire. But let me be the first to tell you that is not the case. Not only is it possible to reverse everything that was lost, it is also the way that it was intended. When you look at the hairless or thin areas of your scalp, you may see what is missing. You naturally compare to the hairs that are there or hairs that once were there. But let me give you a different perspective of what you are looking at. You are not looking at a failure of the follicle, but the intelligence of the body, even in less than ideal circumstances. You are seeing the work of the beauty of nature and the brawn of man's development in one glimpse. You are seeing hair follicles that have placed themselves in a temporary stasis state until you decide to shift the environment to more favorable conditions. You are seeing a fail-safe, a stopgap. You are not seeing destruction. You are not seeing loss. You are simply seeing a pause, and every pause has a built-in mechanism for procession, does it not? There's a point in your journey, our journey, where hair loss, like light, cannot escape the event horizon. And the event horizon for hair loss is the regrowth threshold. It is the time where your scalp conditions have been successfully reset back to the pre-balding state. Another way to look at the regrowth threshold is to see it as normalization of the hair growth cycle in previously latent follicles. This phenomenon is not an alien concept, nor is it extra in any sense of the word, but simply a confirmation of what you have already experienced your entire life. The body's ability to restart systems and processes that it purposely suspended so that it can minimize the damage and isolate it to one area. This compartmentalization effort is similar to when submarines or spaceships have a fire, breach, or loss of oxygen in an area of the ship. Alarms ring in the Enterprise and that area is quickly quarantined off so that whatever has caused the disruption of normalcy in that module can be mitigated without the risk of spreading. This same isolation safety protocol was switched on in the hair follicle, but if you look at this necessary protective measure from a mainstream lens, we have been simply orbiting around an elusive genetic disorder where our only available landing platform is hair loss. The preoccupation with maintaining our current state in hair loss through topical and internal solutions is a direct result of the dominant traditionalist view of hair loss as natural in the sense that it is programmed, instead of the truth, which is it is as natural as any other ailment, disease, or misalignment. It is an injury that is managed by the body as all other injuries. It is noticed quickly. It is aggressively targeted for repair or removal. It is met with strong resistance based on previous data. It is also flanked with backup or secondary response efforts if the threat is not quickly eliminated. And if all else fails, it is isolated and quarantined off to stop the spread to the best of the body's ability. In the mental space of the regrowth threshold, these necessary precautions are not the antagonists, but the catalysts to our restoration. They are the space capsules that allow us re-entry back home. The regrowth threshold is not theoretical in any sense. It is practical, real, tangible. It has real coordinates that if followed can set you on a course to non-detectable, that beautiful place in hair loss reversal where no one would have ever guessed that you were once a sufferer, and those that are aware would swear that you had a hair transplant. How would you feel looking in the mirror and seeing the hair aesthetic prior to hair loss? How would you style it? I bet you already have something in mind, right? I do too. But that is not a fantasy. It is reality. Here are your coordinates as promised in the introduction. But before that, at the end of this video, I would include bonus information not found anywhere else but here. We need to reverse the course and reroute the trajectory that we are on, and when we use the major milestones of hair loss or visual cues as gravity anchors and swing the balance back the other way, like spaceships use planets as gravity assist. Simply put, for leverage. First, turn your attention down towards the calcification of the environment and the subsequent gluing of the collapsed scalp layers to the lower scalp. The calcium deposits of the scalp in the form of crystallization and are being squeezed between collagen fibers due to inflammation, and the defunct lipid drainage systems will have to be removed. Your task is to decalcify the local area by using topicals or tubes that are meant to target calcium or plaque buildup. I cannot provide every possible coordinate in this video, but I will provide a few that you can ponder and reverse engineer. It is not the product that matters. It is the function that is useful. Rather, it is natty or synthetic. Its main purpose should be to dissolve calcification. In order to simplify our approach to possible therapeutics, I would like to present to you two other ailments of the body, atherosclerosis and kidney stones, that we can use as targets. Atherosclerosis is the hardening of the arteries as the plaque made of calcium, cholesterol, and fat builds up within the walls of the arteries. This plaque can cause arteries to narrow, blocking blood flow. This disease is attributed to inflammation, as the cholesterol buildup is the body attempting to cover the injury sustained, which in turn caused the inflammation in the first place. If we take a bird's eye view of this phenomenon and then apply it to hair loss and the follicles, then it should be pretty clear what you are dealing with and your possible mitigation efforts. We need to stop the cause of the injury, which causes the inflammation, then that causes the calcium to build up, which chokes the follicle, leading to miniaturization of it and the hair that it was growing. What can we take or use to keep the follicles clear of buildup or narrowing? Is that not minoxidil? It is said that it lowers blood pressure, but why? Could it be simply keeping the vessels loose and malleable, allowing more blood flow, even in calcified and restricted dermal arteries, including the dermal papilla of the follicles themselves? Instead of just keeping blocked arteries looser, wouldn't it make sense to unblock them or to attempt to dissolve what is causing the blockages? Ginseng reduces serum lipids and is a DHT inhibitor. Garlic extract with coenzyme Q10 has been known to slow atherosclerosis. Garlic by itself has been known to break down plaque and assist with heart health and even blood pressure. Magnesium breaks down calcium topically and internally. Apple cider vinegar can break down calcium and plaque topically. There are so many potential doorways of dissolving calcification, such as kidney stones as well. Please type this in your search engine or YouTube. Antilytic herbs. They are meant to assist with urinary tract issues in the form of kidney stones, which, as you know, are made of calcium and a few other minerals. These can also be used in hair loss. You will be surprised that although the skin of the body stops most substances from entering, the scalp is a lot more porous, and there is something that you do every day to make your hair loss worse: shower in non-filtered tap water. Those rings around the toilet when you come back from vacation are not just biological, but mineral deposits. And for the followers of this channel who are more interested in lab-based solutions and human ingenuity products, you might have to find supplements that you can take that decalcify, or you can search for product brands that target scalp calcification. I am sure there are a few, but many are not aware of the connection between plaque and hair loss. Whichever way that you intend to reverse course on calcification or the plaque-filled environment creating hair loss, it would be a long but fruitful journey ahead, especially when combined with micro-injury tools or exercises such as scalp peeling and gua sha that physically breaks down the plaque or layers riddled with it. When we spoke about the inflammation of the arteries that causes the cholesterol to build up within the arteries, I had a flash of insight that I get occasionally in my hair loss reversal efforts. Do you know what can cause the overproduction of DHT? Cholesterol. It is a precursor to steroid hormones and androgens. It is noted that high concentration of LDL can clog the hair follicles and microvessels that feed it. Are we tracking now? The calcium is the precursor to DHT and the magnifier of it. The more DHT, the less hair. The less hair, the less shared growth hormone, which brings us full circle to the eventual quarantine. But see, that's not all. See, calcification by the way of inflammation also attracts DHT, but the inflammation causes the true changer of the scalp aesthetic to manifest, and that is fibrosis. We would need to swing a full circle around fibrosis just as we did calcification, both being the mechanical physical changes of the scalp that occur in hair loss due to the degradation of the scalp environment. Fibrosis of the scalp dermal layers and even the feminine follicles itself is what creates the illusion that the follicles are dead or no longer viable. It is the condition that locks the follicle into the telogen homeostasis, only waking up to the anagen state once it's somewhat cleared away or replaced with normal scalp tissue. This is similar to the fibroids within the uterus that stops the impregnation of the egg via the sperm. The fibroids or fibrosis of the dermal papilla and surrounding environment see that the androgen testosterone or the growth switch is not turned on in the follicle, but the off switch, DHT, stays activated. Injury causes the inflammation that then creates the calcium plaque buildup as a stopgap to help, only to attract DHT as the backup and secondarily as an off switch to growth. You've never had a genetic hair loss. You have an internal issue that created a topical scalp injury. This is why itching, burning, redness, and irritation have been comorbid with hair loss. And many of the lab-based solutions that we celebrate have ingredients that target these symptoms without saying why. Now you know why. The fibrosis of the scalp will need to be cleared away, but unlike calcium or plaque that can be purged and dissolved, fibrosis is the state of the dermal layers after it has been overcooked by the mitigation efforts of the body, i.e. the immune system. The collagen making up the dermal skin goes into overproduction, creating a tense, hardened scalp that once was malleable and loose, just as the arteries now stiff and thickened. See, what has happened to the arteries, or worse yet, the heart in coronary heart disease, is happening on a small scale in the scalp. And what happens in the liver, as far as fibrosing, is happening in the layers of the scalp, albeit on a smaller, less pronounced scale. Do you know what causes liver fibrosing? Place in your search engine these coordinates: liver fibrosis. The cause: acute and long-term inflammation that causes scar tissue and the overproduction of collagen. Is it clear now? So what can we take or use topically for fibrosis? Or what type of known solutions can we reverse engineer? Serrapeptase enzyme, taurine, bromelain. Something is very interesting about bromelain extracted from pineapples. It can be used to dissolve adhesions. Why is this important as clearing the calcification and fibrosis in the scalp? Earlier I mentioned that the scalp layers seem to be glued to one another. The glue-like substance will erupt from the scalp and the area will become sore and tender. As in removing it, you will begin to uncover the underlying injury that calcium is covering. The same injury that is causing the overproduction of collagen, amplification, and acceleration of hair loss. The gluing of the Gallia ring of the scalp is another aspect caused by inflammation and, in my humble opinion, the greatest threat to keeping your hair. The Gallia ring being inflamed and glued to the top of the scalp sheath, restricting the already narrow blood vessels in the head, is like a large asteroid plummeting an already wrecked ship attempting to navigate its way back home. The Gallia ring needs an anti-adhesive to peel it off from the scalp, releasing the vessels in the lower layer to once again begin irrigating the top half of the head. This is the cause of complete hair loss of the scalp that we call Norwood 7, the hair loss severity pattern, which is a human growth pattern in reverse, one that I am all too familiar with, unfortunately. On the bright side, you have an experienced person in the driver's seat that has already made this journey before and was successful. I think you are in good hands. These three main cause factors of hair loss in the mechanical physical doorway, calcification, fibrosis, and the Gallia ring adhesion, are the main planets that we need to swing around to pick up steam in order to make our way to the regrowth threshold. If you target them, plus inflammation simultaneously, you are more than halfway there. By reversing the aforementioned, most of the scalp environment changes that keep hair loss in a steady declining state are halted. How so? There is no vasodilation circulation issue without the calcification and the narrowing of the microfollicular arteries, or even macro circulation, such as the larger arteries of the scalp. The DHT hormone will no longer surround the area as inflammation and calcium is cleared, which means hair loss is halted. Fibrosis, that should also be called scleroderma, the great quarantiner, will be removed. While you are at it, why don't you take a look at that word in the search engine of your choice, even YouTube. Reversing this allows the follicles to become impregnated by the rightful androgen, testosterone, once again. Another physical change of the scalp that I have encountered myself is the segmentation and separation of the scalp sections due to inflammation or the enlarging of the bone sutures beneath the scalp. Many have stated or mentioned in previous research bone growth and its propensity to cause hair loss. I have not been convinced that it is a primary factor as important as the Gallia ring or the fibrotic calcified environment, but along those lines, the frontal suture needs to have further consideration in our hair loss restoration efforts. This divisionary line between the front and the back of the head in hair loss can be seen quite easily if you look close enough. Beyond or behind the suture seems to be the section of hair loss that stays longer. When you see the frontal hairline being replaced in transplants, it's the front of the suture line. When you see that little tuft of hair in the front of men's hairline and or the temples being retreated back, is usually to that suture line. When you see men with extreme receding frontal but hair in the back that's full, then that line is usually behind the suture. It seems to be the dividing line between the main arteries, or the hair before the suture has a different irrigation system that supports it and seems to be weaker. I can also attest receding is like the scalp sections being compressed together and glued flat, rolling backwards like one would squeeze toothpaste out of a tube. I am not certain why even now my hair loss restoration efforts are less successful in the front of the frontal suture versus the exterior. My theory is frontal fibrosing is a reaction to inflammation, and I have implemented gua sha to address it. But the things that hold together two plates, the sutures, and their influence is not intuitive. Can it be that the sutures themselves have inflammation or have enlarged? Time will tell, but I can honestly say even now my hair directly sitting on the frontal suture is slow to grow, has more villus hairs, and serves as an undeniable visual division between front and back. To attain the regrowth threshold, we have to figure out the suture's direct involvement, because indirectly it causes interruption in blood circulation, which by any account is one of the most important contributors to hair loss. The telogen coma state of the follicles being reversed or reset to anagen is largely dependent on your success in reversing the scalp environmental changes. Getting to the regrowth threshold is about resetting the scalp conditions, but you first want to focus on the larger issues at hand, which is the mechanical, physical degradation that, when reversed, allows a much easier segue into the subsequent secondary therapeutics like topical stimulants and extra nutritional supplementation, internal or external. Once you are clear of extra calcification and the lipid systems unclogged of debris, once your fibrosis is cleared and inflammation is eliminated. Once the scalp sections are recombined and layers unflattened or unglued, decompressing the main arteries and allowing the follicles to extract from the environment once again. Once the Gallia ring has been removed from being a great wall of restriction and unblocking resource sharing between the sides and the top scalp, you will begin entering the space of the regrowth threshold. It's like using your finger to hit the pause button once again, which will ironically unpause the scene before you. The regrowth threshold is like traveling at the speed of light in your spaceship. It is totally different than the conventional modes of operation in hair loss, DHT inhibiting and boosting via stimulants, which at best just keep you suspended in the air. It can warp speed you back to your previous state, unlocking areas of hair loss restoration unfathomable by most people, including the professionals. All you have to do is accept and digest the phrase that I speak. Scalp conditions must be met and maintained. Your next logical thought should be, what are those pre-balding conditions? The scalp is now in decent enough state that activity and flow is becoming the norm, totally opposite of the slow, non-responsive, restrictive state of the previous scalp. In the regrowth threshold, the growth hormones are being shared amongst the feminine follicles as their birth cycles begin to sync, causing more follicles to become impregnated and others to hold at the anagen stage longer. DHT is no longer a factor as you've suppressed inflammation, hopefully by also attempting to target the trigger. Because inflammation has been eradicated, there's no need for calcification, mucus, or anything to clog the arteries or to create buildup of fibroids within a uterine-dominated scalp system. With less inflammation, the collagen cells will behave as normal and will not overproduce, nor would the scalp sections become hardened as a protective measure against it being inflamed or injured. The ideal scalp, the uterine-dominated scalp, will have replaced the alpha prostate dominated scalp, in which prostate meds need to be used to inhibit DHT, such as finasteride, or blood pressure medicines such as minoxidil can be exchanged for something natty or used much less. The tension of the scalp that also contributes to hair loss will be minimized as the scalp is no longer hard and thick, but once again supple and omega-like as it once was. In the regrowth threshold, the ideal scalp conditions reattained, your hair loss will not only stop, but you will regrow hair in all viable hair follicles and see the aesthetic hairline of your dreams. Your hairline and your temples will once again be the hairline of your ancestral line, that of your father in his prime, not in his decline. You will look in the mirror and once again see the image looking back at you that you know is the real you, that you feel is the version that you want to promote and show the world, the version of you that you intuitively knew was hidden and suppressed, and yet you could not shake the feeling that it was not gone forever. That inkling is what has driven you to find my channel, but most importantly, find your way back home. The journey is not easy and it will be long and tough, but at the end of the day, you've already made up your mind that no matter what happens or what lies ahead, you will be successful. I am simply a digital representation of that decision, the event horizon where hair loss cannot escape. The point of no return is driven primarily by the singularity of your thought, I can do this. In conclusion, as mentioned previously, the real intent of the coma of your follicles, that intelligent state, was like a secret tool or technology placed in that spaceship that if you ever decided or desired to find your way back home, it would be possible. It was the body's intent all along for you to reach the regrowth threshold once again, successfully navigating to the point of no return in hair loss. As promised, here's a bonus thought that I want to leave with you. My hair loss restoration pattern is regrowing the opposite of the Hamilton-Norwood loss pattern. This means that my efforts of resetting the physical degradation of the scalp automatically turned on some sort of inherent built-in reinitialization of growth patterns. What this tells you is hair growth is as automated and involuntary as the loss. Your job is to reverse all changes. When you are successful at doing so, everything else that you use topically or internally is just icing on the cake. Instead of saying all roads lead to Rome, in hair loss, it should be all efforts are meant to reach the regrowth threshold. Like this video, sub the channel, and comment below if this video in any way has been helpful for you. I'd like to hear your thoughts as iron sharpens iron and we only have each other. And remember, if I can do it, you all can do it too. Let's get you back to the barber.